Right. Right. Yeah. Good morning, Shanta Devi, ma'am. Good morning, Tamil Ramadam. I need to change my name. Wait. So we exactly have 10 more minutes. All right.
Good
So
morning, sir.
good morning. Good morning, Dhanlakshmi. Does anybody have a problem with my voice? Are you able to hear me out clearly, or is it feeble and is it breaking up?
No, sir, it's clear.
Clear? Okay. All right. Okay. Welcome, Sutlam from Vidya Mandir Estancia. Yeah. Welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah. Hello, Nisha ma'am from Doughton Girls and Boys Higher Secondary School. Hello, Padma ma'am. Good morning. Yeah. So while we have another 7 more minutes to start, why don't you just let us know what is your expectation? What is that you're looking forward to learn from this session? What would you like to learn? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead. What would you like to learn from the session? What is the takeaway that you're expecting from the session? Yes, Helen ma'am, go ahead.
How to create about a safe environment while having these classes.
Okay, safe environment, right? Excellent. So how do we conduct ourselves? How do we create a safe environment? I think it's a combination of everything, right? I mean, it's not just about creating infrastructure or facilities, but also making sure that we change the way we look at things in the future, right? That's very important. Chandra Gurunathan is saying how to create awareness among adolescent children who are not serious about COVID. I think this session is not going to be about that. We are not into other sex education exclusively on this. I think this is going to be more about the legal perspective, like what should we do and what is the consequence. I think Swapna Sundar ma'am will be able to throw more light on that, but it's very important to know that particular dimension, because most of the time we only see the emotional side of the news. We don't see the rational side, or what are the preventive actions, or what are the frameworks that we need to develop to um, avoid such incidents in our education institution. So we are firmly focusing on that direction, and I think that's what you are going to hear from us today. As a teacher, as an educator, as an educationalist, as a parent, as a student, I know that some of the students of sociology have been enrolled for this session. I'm very glad that students want to take part in this session. So so this is going to be a combination of more on what to do, what are the legal compliances, what is the ethical compliance that we need to have to create a safe environment. That's what we are going to talk about. Yes.
Hey, telephone go.
See, one interesting thing is this is going live on YouTube and more than 1,000 people are watching. So if you're unmuting and if you're saying something, everybody hears it. So just make sure that you're on mute. So, I mean, if you don't mind, then we are also okay with that. But in case, it's good to be on mute right now. Okay, Paridhi is saying, good morning, sir. I would like to know how to make the children with special needs understand about. I think it's a very important question. Maybe, I don't know if Swapna ma'am can throw some light on that, but I leave it to her. But yes, this is a very interesting question, very important question too.
Good morning.
Yes, Bhavani Senapati is saying I expected to have a discussion on it. It's more important. Yes, in fact, we wanted to keep the discussion part a little longer. So Swapna ma'am has kind of agreed to keep it like around 30 to 40 minutes. So she's going to keep the session going to be about 40 minutes. So I will take 5 minutes, and then Swapna ma'am will take about 40 minutes, and then it's open for Q&A. So I would request all of you to be, what do you say, interactive, and we might not take all voice questions. Maybe if you can post your questions on the chat box, and maybe if you as and when the session is happening, if you can post your questions, I can pull up and I can ask those questions to Swapna ma'am. Yeah, so we can do that. Um,
Good morning. This is Pungurali here
yes, ma'am.
from Vidya Mandal.
Okay. 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 So I think it's good time to share the screen and started. Is my screen visible to all of you?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Good morning, everyone. And my name is Tamir Selvan, and I am part of Future Captains. Uh, I'm also the founder and CEO of Future Captains. I believe this is a very, very important session for the education, the teaching community, the educational fraternity, because this is where we are seeing a lot of buzz around and a lot of news, a lot of press around, sexual harassment of late, especially about education institutions. And it's very important that, it's not to get emotional about it, but also get very practical and rational. And at the same time, it's important, and it's more important to be aware of the framework on how to go about setting a safe environment, both for the children as well as for the staff, right? And that's where we are coming from. And I will wanted to kind of run you through about Future Captains. I will take about 5 minutes, because the question is who we are and what we are doing. I'm sure that question is there with all of you. So I will take about 5 minutes, and then I will hand over the session to Swapna ma'am. All right. So am I audible? First of all, are you everybody able to hear me out? Is my voice clear? Are you able to see my presentation? Great. All right, let's go ahead. So, see, we are an organization. I'm a HR professional myself, and I left my full-time job because I wanted to create a talent encouragement ecosystem. See, everybody has a talent, and everybody wants to become something. But encouragement is not something that happens in our society that easily. We most likely face a lot of flack or a negative feedback for things that we are not. But there is strength in each one of us, and how do we spot that strength, and how do we develop that strength into something that is helping us to grow in our career? So that is where the thought started. And what we are building is an ecosystem where we want to connect with parents, teachers, educational institutions, industry people, and of course help the student develop themselves into a useful citizen for the nation as well as for the global community as well. So that is what we are up to. Um, why we are a very important player in the society or the ecosystem is, see, we understand that the career is an ongoing process, and every time, see, if most of you are teachers and educationists, you are still attending the session because you want to learn something. Learning is a continuous process, and learning something new helps us to put us on top of the what do you say, economical chain, and helps us to grow better. So we believe that we need to start guiding children right from 8th grade up to even retirement, right? That's how we are looking at. And our services are catered to both school, rather for school kids, high school children, for college graduates, and working professionals. So this is how we have developed our model. We focus on 4 verticals, which is primarily into career research, career guidance, training and events, and of course placements. So placements won't come for schools, but for colleges, we are working out a model for helping students to find the right opportunity. So we have developed a career architecture model, which is based on 5 principles. First, predict, which is basically developing a system to predict the strengths of the student, helping them to select the right stream in 11th grade, and also probably after they finish their 12th, they get into college. They will be able to select the right degree, or even after finishing college, selecting the right job is also something that we help with. Second is prepare, where we provide industry expert mentoring. Like Swapna ma'am is one of our mentors. Likewise, we have many mentors in our team who are helping students day in, day out, and helping them become better versions, especially in the chosen field of profession that they wanted to kind of grow in. And we also train students on higher order thinking skills, critical thinking, 21st century skills, and that's also something that we do as part of the career architecture model. Third is practice. See, no matter what you do in the classroom, it has to be put to use. Application is important. So what we do is we have developed modules where the student can do a project with one of our mentors. They can do internship programs. They can do externships. They can even partner with NGOs and do volunteering programs. And we are talking to many NGOs of late and trying to get volunteering programs for the school children. And promote, where we are helping the students to build a portfolio, because tomorrow if they want to go to Harvard or Stanford or Yale or even one of the best private universities in the country, they need to have a statement of purpose. They need to have a portfolio to prove that they are a best in class student. So portfolio building is something that we start doing right from grade 8, and we help the students do it. And finally, pursue, where we do the last mile connectivity. We put them across for employability training, resume building, and of course connect with employers for potential job opportunities. So this is the end-to-end model that we have created, and we've been in the market for about 4 years, and we are bringing the best practices to every student of the nation. We wanted to democratize some of the best learning methodologies for the student. Whatever we do is for both schools and colleges. We have different dosage, but then both are applicable to schools and colleges, and of course universities as well. So we help the students in SUPW, project-based learning, joint project with expert or industry professionals, volunteering programs, thinking skills, and of course portfolio building. So these are some of the best practices that we are bringing to the student community, and of course we are looking to partner with educational institutions to take this to the next level. And we are reducing the burden of this, the management overload of the schools, because the student becomes self-motivated once they start delivering results, and that's where we contribute a lot. These are some of the programs that we have done. We also train people to become a career guidance counselors. We provide virtual internship programs, and we do higher order thinking skills training program. And these are some of the events that we have conducted. We have done panel discussions on NEP, National New Education Policy. We are also coming up with our IT jobs fair in the next few weeks. So these are some of the things that we have done. And this is one of our hiring services. I'm sorry. Yeah. And so this is a little about us. And this is all about Future Captains. And of course, this is my contact number. Now let's move on to Swapna ma'am's session, right? So a quick intro about Swapna. I will just, I think I met her about last year, and we connected on the social network, and then we kind of vibed well, and we kind of started talking about how to take things forward. I think there were a lot of common grounds, and very important. I have worked very closely with law college students, so that was one of the things, because I'm always interested to see how the future lawmakers should be. And she came across as a role model that every student should emulate, right? And a background, she's a BA political science student from Madras Christian College. Then she did her BLML from Dr. Ambedkar Law University. She also went to do her, a postgraduate diploma in patents law and intellectual property rights in NALSAR Pro, and she also did her IP strategy diploma in WIPO Executive Academy, and she went to Brussels School of International Studies and University of Kent to pursue her Master of Law, International Law, and International Relations. So this is her background, and she's also going to colleges and schools, and she's talking on ethics. Very important topic that I think she's doing her bit on nation building. And she's also a member of advisory group in National Institute of Epidemiology, and also she's also a chairperson in Apollo Biomedical Research Institutional Ethics Committee. So these are some of the and of course, she's also a member board of studies in Symbiosis International University. So she's been in various capacities. She's contributing to the student community, the legal fraternity, and of course, upholding the law and order of the nation. And she's a strong advocate of the startup ecosystem. She's been helping various startups in procuring an intellectual property and securing their knowledge to build a better nation forward. So this is a very elaborate background of Swapna ma'am, and welcome you heartily, Swapna. And this is like a dream come true for me, because I think this session is very close to my heart. And I remember talking to you about, we should do something about it. And you sent me that booklet that we are going to share it with all these people, like what education institutions can do to prevent such incidents, right? So, and I think, we are very extremely delighted as part of Future Captains, and looking forward to your session. And yeah, over to you. I have given you co-host access. You can share your presentation, and you may start your presentation, Swapna ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Future Captains for this opportunity and taking this subject to a wider audience. I am very happy to meet all the representatives from different educational institutions. Coming from Madras Christian College, a co-ed institution with very liberal values, I'm really proud today to be here and to see if we can take those values to a wider audience as well. So without any further talk, let me just share my presentation. So I'm going to speak about a framework that can help your educational institution, that can help your employees and your administration, but priority will be on the safety of the children and the safety of the women and young people in your institution. As Tamil Selvan was saying, and as we are all aware, our city has been hit with a spate of different kinds of complaints against teachers, academies, educational institutions, and different places of training. And I read from the latest news item that I saw yesterday that there are about 78 complaints against staff of institutions in the city alone. And we have been seeing that many of these have resulted in a lot of loss of reputation and loss of reputation and probably a little difficulty for these institutions to get up on their feet again. I am often asked this. I also form part of the committee of the for youth protection in the Rotary district of Chennai. One of the issues that we come across is how important are these policies for prevention? Isn't it enough that we have a criminal law and police and courts to take care of it? So don't criminals or others aren't they afraid of the penalties? Aren't they afraid of going to prison? Are they not afraid of other penalties like fines or rigorous imprisonment? Why do they continue to have this kind of criminal mentality, or why are they continuing to be criminals? The truth is that punishment and penalties has never stopped criminals from carrying on their activities. In fact, very early in the criminal jurisprudence in France and England, it was discovered that at a hanging of a thief, you would have a lot more theft happening. A lot more people would be engaging in criminal activity in the place where thieves were being hanged. So it's very important for us to understand that penalties have never been forced criminals to reconsider their action. This is something that we are reluctant to accept, and yet this is something that we are facing day after day. Is it that all these officials and teachers and non-teaching staff against whom allegations and complaints have been made, are they not aware that if they are caught in the act, or if complaints are being made that they might be put in prison? Of course they are aware of it. Then why do they go against such and continue with such activities? It is human nature, and it will continue to happen. Many of us start institutions and schools and colleges not with the intention of permitting such activities. Our intention is perhaps to provide services to the community, to ensure that children have a good education. And the other objective is also to have a respectable livelihood for ourselves and our employees. Nobody starts a school or a chess academy or an athletics academy with the intention of allowing such offenses to be committed. So who is responsible ultimately? There are two ways of looking at it. All laws, and this is taken from the Tamil Nadu Acts as well as Puducherry Acts, if you see who is responsible, it is ultimately the management that is responsible for any action that happens in the premises, or by an employee, or by a person who is volunteering on the premises. So whether we like it or not, the director of a school, or a managing trustee, or the principal of the school, or the person who is in direct control over those premises is responsible for such activities happening. It is very, people do say that I did not commit the offense, it is somebody else, it is some other person who has committed the offense. I am merely a manager, but no. For whatever purposes, the law considers that within the control of, within the premises, the person having control is responsible. and they are responsible by neglect or they are responsible by carelessness. They are not directly responsible for the offense naturally, but it is quite likely that they will be deemed guilty of either negligence or carelessness or inability or incompetency or some such thing. But in the direct course of things, they are responsible. What happens when such an activity happens? One, we are seeing what is happening. So there is a lot of loss of reputation, damage to the school, damage to other dedicated professionals in the school, damage to the students. Oh, you come from this school, did it happen to you as well? And then a lot of probably unwarranted allegations as well. So validated allegations do often, when they are spread out, there is a lot of gossip, there is blame. So there's a possibility of a lot of loss of reputation. But other than that, there are specific issues that may happen. One, if the government feels that the school or management or school management or trustee is not able to manage the school properly, and they have neglected to perform any of the duties imposed on them, then the government might take over the management of the school. Of course, there is a hearing and appeal procedure and so on, but always there is a right of the government to take over a school that is not being run properly. The government always has a right of, or the governmental authority always has the right to inspect or inquire into any activity in respect of its buildings, laboratories, libraries, teaching methodology or teaching quality, equipment, and so on. So they will definitely come into your school and they will definitely inspect and inquire as to the quality and effectiveness of the teaching and other activities. And if they are not convinced, or if the governmental authority feels that certain activities are going overboard, they are illegal activities, then they will give a show cause notice and the management will have to answer to that show cause notice. The competent authority, of course, may also at any time, with reasons in writing, may withdraw permanently the recognition of any school. So CBSE might do it or the state government might do it. And once recognition is lost, it is very difficult to continue the business of the school. So therefore, apart from loss of reputation and damage to our viability of the school, it is also possible that the school might not be able to run at all. Over the last few years, ever since the MeToo movement started with Tarana Burke in 2006 and subsequently with Raya Sarkar's list of sexual harassers in academia going viral in 2017, it was the MeToo of children was waiting to happen. And incidentally, perhaps because of the pandemic and so on, in the last couple of years, it's grown widely across the globe. There is a MeToo movement of children in France. There is a MeToo movement of children in other parts of Europe as well. So is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? The reason I bring this up is a lot of newspapers report sexual abuse in schools as a MeToo complaint. I'm not completely convinced of it. The hashtag MeToo is more of a movement where adult people were opposed to sexual predators. So it was a movement that women, vulnerable women, particularly who were looking for career growth or other paths of growth in society and community, were forced to deal with harassers. But somehow sexual abuse of children and sexual harassment of children is a little different, particularly because minors do not have a right to consent at all. There is no question of a child below the age of 18 consenting to any sexual activity. This is not the case with a child in college, with a student in college, or with a person who is entering the film industry. So therefore, whether hashtag MeToo can be straight away applied to a child in 8th standard is a question that we may have to ask. That said, Article 23 of the Convention of the Rights of Child require that state parties recognize that children should have a right to participate in the community, participate not just independently, but also in groups, and have their opinion be recorded, particularly in decisions that require that are going to impact them. So perhaps the social media has evolved to give this place to young children who are in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and they are able to today come forward, form groups that are protective inter se, and they are able to come out and participate in the community by letting their voice be heard. What is the advantage of having children speak their mind? One, we come to know of the truth of their life. many parents believe that our children are completely innocent. They have no idea of what is happening. They have no clue about sexual life and so on, which is not strictly true. As psychologists will tell us, from about the age of 9 or 10, most children are quite aware of their sexual selves. And therefore, giving them a right to participate in such activities might actually enable and empower them to say no. So a child cannot consent when they are below 18, but that they can say no in powerful voices. So that's an important requirement. How does a policy protect schools? So I have this question particularly with activists who are working with child sexual abuse as to how good or how useful is a policy. A policy is useful in two ways. First, the policy protects the institution from third party claims, lawsuits, and allegations of negligence. So currently, many of the schools are going through a very tough time because they don't have a policy that tells its employees and its volunteers and its workers how they are supposed to respond to such allegations. Most people, most institutions are have been thrown into disarray by these allegations, and they are forced to come up with piecemeal responses to whatever is happening. A policy will be able to provide a reasonable explanation if there is one, or at least a reasonable apology if there is one. So what is important is that a policy will provide certainty of response in times of crisis. It also protects volunteers and employees in case of questionable or dubious allegations. So it is not, it has been factually proved that 94% of every allegation of sexual harassment or abuse is true. It is absolutely true. It is perhaps 4 to 6% of allegations that are either false or malicious. So it is our duty as lawyers, doctors, and teachers, and probably institutional heads, to accept a child's complaint or allegation as true in the first instance. So it's very important that we first accept the child's complaint and then take action to see what is needed to be done. But it's also important to understand that there are volunteers and employees who may be hurt by that 3 to 4% of false or malicious allegation, which also this policy will protect the school from. It also helps students and stakeholders like parents to understand what is the stand of the school in a particular instance. So a child entering a school will have clarity about it being a safe and secure environment for learning and developing. Very importantly, a policy will protect children from unsupervised contact with persons who are not right for that kind of contact, people who have been convicted of crimes, people who are likely to take advantage. It is unfortunate, but most predators and pedophiles are looking for access to children. And many schools with good intentions might have probably involved them as instructors, as teachers, as volunteers within that institution, providing unintentional access to children for pedophiles. The role of the management of the school is very important. The policy cannot be created by a teacher in the class. It cannot be created by a bus driver or a non-teaching staff member unless they are in a committee. So the role of the management, Tamil Selvan, I would just like you to note and please give me a hard stop at 40 minutes. I
Fine.
forgot to update.
We'll do that. We'll do
yes.
that. No problem.
So the role of the management is to actually provide the policy. I like this very much. Warren G. Bennett is probably one of the contemporary leadership philosophers who says leaders are people who do the right thing and managers are people who do things right. In order to have a policy and run it and implement it to the benefit of the child, it is necessary to have a management that does the right thing, and managers and principals and class teachers who do it right. So it's important for the teachers and non-teaching staff and probably coaches and other people to have an implicit trust in the management's ability to guide them and provide leadership to do the right thing. The manager can, of course, use guidelines and common sense to sometimes alter the process or procedure at ground level, but on the whole, the policy guides them. So it is the leader who provides the vision and the leader or the management who provide the architecture. In the case of schools in Tamil Nadu, it is the school committee So the school committee will have to be set in place by the management of the school. And then the leader also has to step back and watch the execution happening. Thereafter, their role is more to listen to the community, listen to the students, listen to the teachers, the various stakeholders, including teachers and psychologists and lawyers like me, to see how to better this vision that they have created. There are a multitude of laws in this country dealing with education at the school level and at the college level, and I've tried to pull out as far whatever would probably be relevant to this subject. So all of these laws are at some level necessary and impactful when implemented in our educational institutions. A bit of management, perhaps those who are working in the management area might recognize this and be able to understand it as well. But the law only forms the basis or foundation of how the system should be regulated. It provides a list of compulsions and prohibitions, mandatory obligations, and so on. But thereafter, it leaves it to the community to develop the required guidelines to make that go forward. For instance, the law might say that every school should take every reasonable step to protect the child. Now, what is a reasonable step? How should the school take a reasonable step? How should the class teacher take a reasonable step? How should the sports master take a reasonable step? Is not actually provided in the law. And that is where the community space needs to evolve, and they need to create policies, standards, procedures, and guidelines. So a policy will have to evolve from the management. A policy statement will identify the problem and the scope of the resolution. They will also tell the institution why the action needs to be to be performed. So in this case, any of the schools that have gone through this experience will definitely be going back to revisit what went wrong. At that point, they will have to put in place a policy identifying the problem, and then the problem may lie in recruitment, the problem may lie in lack of monitoring, the problem may lie in lack of supervision, or it may lie in the quality of teaching or methodology of teaching that is provided. So based on that, the policy will have to evolve. Standards are constantly evolving. We have an Indian standard, we have an international standard, we have international harmonized standards, and so on. The standards may also depend on which authority, whether it is CBSE or matriculation or Tamil Nadu government or Puducherry government, which government is setting the standards. So the specific standard that has to be reached, the specifics or details of what is required will be stated in the standard. The procedure will specify what is needed to achieve the standard. What should the teacher do? What should the laboratory attendant do? What type of laboratory facilities you should have? And then what kind of supervision must be provided, and so on. Do you need cameras? How many cameras do you need? Should only the corridors have cameras? Should classrooms have cameras? Should toilets have cameras? Or should you have a camera in the staff room? All this has to be decided on the basis of standards and procedures. After that, you have to decide on how that footage must be used. Who can access the footage? Can every member of the management access the footage? Should you only the police access the footage? Or should you have a special monitoring unit to access the footage and stay alert all the time? All of these issues will be handled by the procedure or policy. Expertise can be drawn from different law frameworks. It is not necessary that just because you are a primary school or just because you're a nursery school or a Montessori school that you cannot take framework assistance from other legal frameworks. For instance, the ODL rules, the online and distance learning rules of the AICTE provide that there should be a center for internal quality assurance. Now, this is a fantastic thing. I have just pulled out a couple of statements from the internal quality assurance statement, but it says the internal quality assurance under AICTE to maintain quality of services provided to the learner. So the services provided to the learner are not just of teaching, it is also of infrastructure, it is also of a safe environment. So the ODL, the CIQA will ensure or will monitor the teaching quality to ensure that there is a standard of quality maintained in the teaching. In again, the 2020 Pragyata guidelines on digital education under BharatNet, they provide a lot of do's and don'ts. So a list of do's and don'ts may be provided to the students, teachers, and parents about how to do digital learning. Now, the Pragyata guidelines merely state that the school should provide a list of do's and don'ts, but they don't specify what are the do's and don'ts. Perhaps they don't do that because it may depend on the culture, the norms in that city, the norms within that institution, and so on. However, students are should be made aware of cyberbullying and also not to involve in cyberbullying. And they should also be given certain rules, such as not to share personal information, videos, messages, images, and so on. So there are guidelines and frameworks for online teaching already available. Only thing, they're probably not put together, and we might have to do a little more work to get to those guidelines. I also have a little problem with the proliferation of guidelines across the country. So every government comes up with a guideline after every incident. This is not particularly the best way to deal with it. A piecemeal dealing with these issues may not work out, particularly in a sensitive area. We read earlier that the law decides that the management is responsible. We have one more way of looking at who is responsible within the school premises. Under the Juvenile Justice Act, Section 75 prescribes a punishment for cruelty to the child. Now, cruelty is defined within Section 75 as, and the definition section reads like this: whoever having actual charge of or control over. So, actual charge of is the school, and control over could be anyone who is there at the local premises just then. It could be the PT master, or it could be the lab attendant, or it could be the class teacher. So a person actual charge of is the principal of the school. Actual control over might be somebody else. Over a child, assaults, abandons, abuses. So the person should not abuse, assault, or abandon the child. But in addition, they should not expose or willfully neglect a child or cause the child to be excuse me for that. So they should also be responsible to not expose the child. Now, whether we like it or not, when we put together the school and we brought the children to the school and we brought the teacher to the school, or we brought the non-teaching staff or driver to the school, we created the situation for certain incidents to occur. It is not desirable, but that is the truth. And therefore, it is important to understand that having charge of the child, we are also in loco parentis. So at that point, we must have enough procedures in place to show that we have as much control over the situation as the parent of the child, or as much care or due diligence is exercised to protect the child as a parent. The POCSO Act has received a lot of sensational popularity in the media, and for some reason that has probably taken control of the conversations around all kinds of child abuse. But I would not be so limited in the scope. However, under the POCSO Act Section 19, any person having charge or any adult who is likely to know that such an act can be committed or is likely to be committed has a mandatory obligation to report it to the police. The Tori wing in Tamil Nadu, and that is the special juvenile police, or if such a unit is not present, then to the local police. So these responsibilities are mandated by the law. They don't say how to do it. For instance, if I see a child being abused, I can complain. But if someone tells me that they have witnessed a child being abused, then am I mandatorily obligated to go and report it, or am I to force that person to go and mandatorily report it? How does it work? We don't know. This is where policies will assist us. So if another child has witnessed a child being abused or harassed and has reported it to an adult, then perhaps it is my role to go and report it to the police. Is it, or should I take the other minor child to the police and force that child to report it? These things can be addressed by the policies that we evolve. And it needs to be done in such a way that there is no multiple references to the same offense. I just said that I would not limit myself in scope. That is because child sexual abuse is not the only kind of child abuse that happens in schools or educational institutions, or that are alleged to happen in other institutions. There are various other kinds of abuses. For instance, emotional and verbal abuse may happen on the basis of caste or disability, on the basis of gender, or an intersex child might be abused verbally or emotionally. Neglect may happen when a child is deprived of shelter or medical care when necessary. An injured child may not be taken to a school hospital or to an appropriate medical service center. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. And here we are looking at a number of different sexual harassment modes of sexual harassment, including sexual epithets or jokes or oral references to one's sexual life. It is quite possible in the recent past. We must be happy that children are coming out to their parents and to the community as being non-binary. They are maybe gay or bisexual or intersex, and they need to participate in our community just as we have a right to participate. So sexual epithets or gossip about their sexual life could and will be seen as sexual harassment. Who is supposed to implement a policy that we have come up with? Assuming that the school has decided that there should be a policy and guideline, who should implement? Under the Tamil Nadu Recognized Private Schools Regulation Act, it is the school committee that needs to implement it, because they are the people who carry on the general administration of the private school. They appoint the teachers and other employees. They fix their salaries and define their duties and conditions of service. And they have the right to take disciplinary action. Therefore, it is understood that it is the school committee that needs to do it. But for all practical purposes, it is probably the principal who is at the point, or a coordinator of the school, or in whatever way they might be referred to. A child, what should be the components of a child protection policy? The most important statement is that there needs to be a positive statement in favor of child protection. It is necessary that the school must make their policy very clear in positive terms. This school strives to create and maintain an environment of safety and security for all children on the premises. It might be that a mother is bringing the younger child while picking up the older child at school. That child is also deserving of safety and security. To the best of the ability of teachers, volunteers, non-teaching staff, contract workers, probably a carpenter or an electrician or plumber who's there on the premises, all of them might have to undertake to agree that they will not harass a child or they will not abuse a child, and that whenever only relevant people will come into contact with the child. So this positive statement is more necessary. The law is always couched in negative ways. This should not be done. This should not be done. The policy is a positive statement, and a policy will help the stakeholders to monitor their own behavior and to be motivated to follow the positive behavior model. A child protection officer is probably necessary and relevant in when you have a policy in place. The child protection officer is responsible for ensuring full compliance. You may call them whatever you like. You may call them youth protection officer, or you may call them child protection lead if you don't want to refer to them as an officer. But this person is responsible for full compliance with the policy and guideline. They are also fully in control of the supervision of policy protocols and their implementation. So that means that they must have a monitoring agency behind them, or at least enough number of people to have to monitor the situation. Every adult stakeholder must understand and give an undertaking that they will be in compliance with the policy statement. This includes parents and those members of the parent-teacher meeting of the association who visit the school. It is not, it is my statement or my opinion that any person could be the person that you're protecting the child against. It could be a visiting parent, or it could be a visiting sibling. So therefore, every adult stakeholder must understand that this policy is in place within these premises, and therefore, implicitly or otherwise, they must accept the statement. Teachers and other persons employed should be governed by a code of conduct. There is a code of conduct under the Tamil Nadu Private School Regulations Act, but and I think I have extracted it somewhere. They do not specifically talk about sexual abuse or harassment or bullying or neglect and so on. There is an anti-ragging act in colleges, but there is no similar act, similar law for schools. So there is no anti-bullying legislation or anti-ragging legislation in high school, for instance, where this is quite prevalent. So we might have to think of bringing these, bringing some important elements from these frameworks into our policy. The school committee may define standards of conduct to be observed by teachers and other persons, and such standards, being consistent with the act, will be allowed to be brought into effect. Therefore, the standard of conduct need not be limited to the code of conduct provided under the law. The school committee can create further standards of conduct, and within these further standards of conduct, they can definitely bring in any other activities like bullying, neglect, and exposure to assault or exposure to bullying. Selection and screening of staff and teachers is very important. Most of the government regulations talk only about BSc, MSc, MTech, BTech, or Pandit, or whatever educational qualification, relevant experience, and relevant training. They do not speak about the willingness or ability of such a person to be a teacher. So mere passing a teacher's training course or a B.Ed may not psychologically prepare them to be a good teacher. So apart from the requirements of formal qualifications and trainings, a school policy or a guideline could have various other components, including a criminal background check. So a criminal background check is very easy to get. I have got it myself. It costs 500 rupees. It is online. And if you file it today, you will get it in 3 to 5 days. And it is valid for 3 years. Does a criminal background check ensure that the person you are recruiting is going to be a really good person? No, but at least it will put on notice the person who is coming there to access children. So if such a person sees that there is a criminal background check involved, they might think twice about joining the school. What happens if a teacher refuses, saying, I don't want to do it, I will feel insulted to seek a criminal background check? That's what the policy has to decide. Do you really want a teacher who will not abide by the standards laid down by the school? Would you want to think about it twice? It is also important to have a personal interview with the teacher or with the non-teaching staff who's applying for the position and assess their suitability for the position. Please do feel free to bring in a psychologist at the interview, or a person who is specially trained in education to bring in that person for the interview to make a decision on whether the candidate is suitable for being a teacher. Providing a list of references, this probably is already being done. The comprehensive interview could involve
Swapna, sorry to interrupt. You have a time check, 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Samashan. Yeah. So it's very important for the teacher to commit to the safety and security of students. They can demonstrate this by saying that I was a counselor in a school camp, or I was in NCC or whatever. So that may demonstrate that they are child friendly and aware of such acts or aware of such policies. Again, the school committee, school committee is quite a diverse group, so it is a fairly well constituted group, though I would say senior most non-teaching staff or senior most teachers of the school may not want to take on this role, in which case you might want to consider somebody else, but the law mandates that it should be the senior most teachers of the school. However, to my knowledge, as a participant in many ethics committees, once the committee is formed and the committee is given enough independence, they generally seem to do a good job. So I would say that school committee is a good enough organization to implement these policies. The code of conduct also has a little gap where we can fill in issues about neglect, abuse, and so on. So they say here that a teacher employed in a private school who becomes involved in a criminal proceeding shall inform the school committee. And then every teacher employed in a school shall conform to the rules and regulations. So within that, we can bring in a certain amount of safety and security considerations as well. Somewhere they also mention decency or morality. So if a teacher is not fit to teach, then they might also fall under the decency and morality criteria. Form 4 of the application for recognition of school states that one of the conditions are whether arrangements have been made for compulsory medical inspection of the pupils. I would say that it's quite okay to include an emotional screening or a mental health screening in this. This will help you to proactively screen a child for abuse or other neglect or any other harm to the child. Training and sensitization is very important. I know that a number of girls receive training, particularly from NGOs, but boys are woefully neglected in this respect. So training and sensitization is very important. Not only do students need to be trained and sensitized, teachers, non-teaching staff, any members of the community who participate, like the traffic wardens who come to teach road safety, should be trained and sensitized in aspects of the policy that are relevant to them. Specialized trainings need to be given to those people who are in charge of handling allegations and follow through. They may need to be trained in legal aspects as well. Perhaps you can involve your lawyer in the whole process so that you can have a more rounded training. How do you do allegation handling and follow through? So one of the issues that we face, that we see in schools is the students claim that they have given an allegation complaint and the school says they have received none. So it's very important to see where the gap is. So allegation handling and follow through is very important. The institution needs to have a proper system. Currently, the Tamil Nadu government has issued guidelines under the for prevention of sexual abuse, and they have recommended the establishment of student safety advisory committee, and also complaint boxes where students can report and put their complaints. But it is quite possible to have an online complaint box or complaint reporting system as well. Proactive monitoring techniques are also relevant to identify which child, or particularly in the case of an anonymous complaint or allegation, to identify children involved. So the first very important follow-through condition is that the school must be willing to cooperate with law enforcement agencies. It is necessary that the school cooperate. How they cooperate is by handing over documents, recordings, footage, maybe registers, or any other service records and so on of the persons involved, and further to appear in interviews and so on. I am seeing people being grilled for hours in the police station because they probably don't have the documentary evidence to help the enforcement agencies. They also must have a mechanism to review and evaluate their files regularly. So it is not possible, nor is it permissible, to have a person have unsupervised contact with a child either online and offline for several hours every day, and no way to review that. So it is very important to have an evaluation and review methodology. What happens when an adult in a school receives an allegation report? First, listen attentively and stay calm. It is very important to remain neutral, not to express shock, horror, or disbelief, but to just listen to the complaint first. And it takes a lot of courage for the child to come up and report it. So be encouraging and be neutral. Second, assure privacy but not confidentiality. Privacy is with regard to the child's body or her personal presence or her personal space. Confidentiality is documentary evidence. It is not possible to do a case privately. It is not possible to keep the child away from the allegation. So the child will have to be informed that it is necessary for the adult to inform the police. It is necessary for the adult to inform the management or the principal, but that the child will be protected and they will not be subject to further harassment. We need to get to know the basic facts. When did it happen? How did it happen? Who was there? Who else was there, etc., but not to interrogate. That is the job of the enforcement authorities. That is the job of the police. Our job is only enough to report the incident. It is important to know what we need to put on the report. Be non-judgmental. It's very difficult to be non-judgmental in this country. We tend to be critical, we tend to blame, we tend to get angry and emotional. It's impossible to do that without training, but we need to be trained to be non-judgmental and reassuring. And finally, document the allegation instantly. It is impossible to take forward the case just on a verbal report. It's very important to immediately record the conversation, date, time, person reporting, person taking down the report, etc., and in as far as possible in the person's exact words, whether in Tamil or English or any other language if possible. What are the next immediate steps? First, protect the young person, get them medical or psychological care if they require. Otherwise, take them to a safe place, maybe give them a drink of water, call the parent, call the institution head, and so on, but ensure that the child is protected. Next, report the allegation to the appropriate authority, to the police, or to the youth protection officer will reach it to the police or the commissioner. If you're not able to do that, then to 1098, and all children must be enabled, empowered to call 1098. Interrogations related to allegations must be entirely left to the law enforcement agencies. If you do know who the alleged abuser is, it is not your job or the job of the institution to interrogate or question the alleged offender. It is very important to remove the offender from the child or from any other child, probably ask them to leave the premises or isolate them. It is not allowed to imprison them. We are not allowed to put them in a room and lock them up. That is not permissible. But it is permissible to ask them to immediately leave the premises and stay away from that particular child or any other children. Avoid gossip and blame, very important. Not necessary to inform everybody about what happened. Only those people who need to know. And this again will be decided by the policy. Who are the people who need to know? And if the police take it up and they deal with it, then that's good enough. A review committee can then sit down and see what went wrong. A policy is not a dead document. A policy is a live and evolving document, and it's very important to review it and see what went wrong and what needs to be done further. Proactive monitoring of the child is very, very important, and it must be done at all ends. Every stakeholder, parents have to do it, teachers have to do it, any other person coming into the contact of the child must do it. If they are withdrawing from friends or usual activities, it must be reported to the parent or school counselor. If there are unexplained injuries or bruises, if there is inappropriate sexual behavior, then these need to be informed to the appropriate authorities within the school or to the parent or guardian. Important points that I might leave you with. One, of course, is have you considered having a school policy? What is your school policy? Will it be able to help you handle future allegations? The second, have you considered insurance? Legal issues, legal cases are expensive. Not only that, you might also need the help of a good PR agency. You might need to reach out to consultants and counselors. Have you considered insurance? Who is your current child protection officer? Is it de facto just your principal? Your principal has a lot of work. He or she is undertaking a lot of teaching and non-teaching and administrative activities. Do they have enough time on their hands to take on child protection activities? Are they trained in the law? Do they know at least basic legal requirements? And conflict resolution. Is there a conflict in your committee? Is there a conflict in your school management regarding these guidelines and policies? Are some people in favor? Are some people against? Is there some way that you can convince them to come on board with a good policy and guideline? These are some questions that we have to ask today in order to make our schools and society safe for children in at least the years to come. Thank you very much, and I'm open to questions.
That was outstanding, Swapna. That was brilliant. I mean, okay. So I think we can open up the floor for questions. I think there were some questions that was posted. Let me just read out a couple for you. Right. There is one question on by what do you say? Okay, let's start with Rakeshwari. I think he said, what about the influence on child by external circumstances like advertisement? Is there something that, I mean, I don't know if we can do anything about it, but who takes care of that part? I mean, who's responsible for that?
So if the child is being influenced in the school, then it's a school responsibility. Or if the child is demonstrating some behavior that they have learned from television or any other source in the school, then it is the school's responsibility. But otherwise, it would be more the guardian or home responsibility. Let me tell you this, Tamil from my experience. When I went once to teach a school, to boys, we were doing some sexual abuse awareness with boys. And I heard a very funny statement where a young fellow, barely 12 or 13, he stands up and says, "Madam, girls la silent arkanu, boys la violent arkanu." So I was quite surprised about this statement, and I said, "Yaar pa unakku idu sonnadu?" Then he said, "Madam, எனக்கு ரெண்டே ரெண்டு leader தான், விஜய், எங்க அம்மா." So this is the influence. I mean, this is how the society has trained them. It is a sad part that, and unfortunately, I might be making a controversial statement here, but perhaps a large majority of our young children from under-resourced areas have very poor male role models. So it is quite likely that there will be an influence. So as long as the influence, so if the influence is demonstrated in the school, it is the job of the institution to correct and probably inform the parent or guardian. And if they're getting the influence in the school, again, it is the role of the school. But otherwise, it is the role of the guardian.
Excellent. Okay. Okay. Then there's one from Chandrika here. What if the school fires the offender? Will it affect the law procedure?
The school is entitled to terminate any teacher for egregious conduct or for any violent or other abusive conduct. But it will have to follow strict principles of natural justice. So they will be suspended, they will be given a chance for a hearing, they might be represented and inquiry. There will be an inquiry committee that is formed, and evidence will be presented from the school side as well as the teacher's side. Therefore, once the inquiry is conducted, yes, they can be terminated if it is warranted. Thereafter, of course, there is an appeal that lies to the courts, but yes, it cannot be a casual firing without a written notice, etc.
Can we take a few more questions, Swapna? I mean, is
Yes,
it okay?
of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going with the next one. Nobody talks about the safety and supportiveness of for teachers. Why is that it always framed that teachers are always wrong? So, so can you throw some light on that?
It's very important. It's very important. In fact, one of the reasons why I talk about youth protection policy and guidelines is to not just protect the child, but to absolutely protect the institution and its workers and its employees and the teachers. It is very important. As I mentioned clearly, that about 4 to 6% of allegations are malicious or false or invalid. Maybe, they are without substance. Maybe they are a misunderstanding.
Right.
But those 6%, I would say that teachers should be given the benefit of the doubt. Not only that, they should be given a proper hearing and inquiry. If there is evidence to the contrary, it should be brought out. I don't think any innocent person, whether they are teachers or students, should suffer. That is justice. It cannot be just a one-sided law or policy.
Right. I think somebody wants to speak. I will unmute them. So Shrikant, you wanted to ask a question? Please go ahead, Shrikant.
Yeah. Good morning, Tamil and Swapna.
Good morning.
Yeah. Just wanted to, it was a great session, and I have a query. You were mentioning about the criminal background check for the candidates while interviewing. So can a management or someone who we are not related to anything which are law or something, how can we check the background of the criminal background of the candidate? And off the record, many things in India are settled outside. If a person is thrown out of an educational institution because of the his conduct is not good, and I don't think that that will be known to the institution who is taking care of, who is recruiting them. And you were mentioning about the psychological behavior should be known, should be tested while interviewing the candidate. And there is any questionnaires or formats available so that we can do some research on that and implement this in the future.
Thank you for that very comprehensive question. Point one, criminal background verification, police verification can be done online by the person themselves or by any person wishing to check on their background with their consent. So if you can tell the candidate either to produce their own police verification certificate, it comes with a unique identity number, or you can ask them to allow you to seek a verification on their behalf. In India, doing a full background verification can be done through agencies. So there are agencies that will do a complete background verification. They will go to the person's different addresses where they have resided and check it out. It's a bit more expensive, and but it's more thorough, and it might probably be relevant if you have doubts beyond a certain point over a candidate. As regards questionnaire, so there are questionnaire available for deciding the person's suitability to the post. I can probably trace it out and send them to you, but many are not relevant to the Indian cultural scenario. I would better advise you to take the advice of a psychologist who might be able to give you better pointers which are relatable to the Indian cultural scenario. For instance, a person in India may believe that a woman should always wear bindi. Okay. Now, in a more liberal society, that may be construed as being unnecessarily intrusive, but in India, it is considered culturally normal. So, therefore, you might not be able to find a document that you can straight away apply to a candidate, or we could jointly evolve some kind of a paradigm that will help us. For the previous question, Tamiselvan, I just thought about this, that it's also important for teachers to be trained. And that also connects with what the question that I was just responding to. There are rules in certain organizations like the Rotary that no volunteer will come within 18 inches of a child participant unless it is relevant, unless it is necessary. So if the child has fallen down and hurt herself, then you have to carry the child to hospital. But in no other circumstance should you come closer than 1.5 feet to the child when talking with the child. But in India, you might, this example I will tell you is of a parent actually. So the parent had gone to pick up his own daughter, and then he saw his, another girl sitting there and crying. So he went and he said, put his arm casually around her neck and said, what happened? Why are you crying? Oh, my mother said she will be late. So he said, okay, let me drop you. So he essentially picked up this girl also and dropped her en route to his own house with his own daughter. Now, by policy, this may be completely wrong. It is not right for an unauthorized person to pick up a child and drop her in her house unless the parent has agreed to it, unless the school has agreed to it. So sometimes teachers and parents and other volunteers might react instinctively that might actually turn around. It might be with good intention. This parent, for an instance, nothing happened. There was no complaint or allegation. But I'm saying this parent reacted with completely good intentions. But had there been an incident, had there been an issue, this person's parents' motivations would have been questioned. Why is it that you had to pick up this child and drop her in her house? Who? Or the other instance that is very common in India is to pinch the cheeks of people, particularly small kids, tap them on their cheek because they are sweet or they did something well. Now, whether a child will construe that as sexual harassment or gender bias, you have to think about that. So teachers and stakeholders need to be trained, and probably these things have to be explained to them. These are new normals for Indian scenario.
So no, I'm very curious to kind of ask this question. Why is that we are always talking about sexual abuse with respect to a girl child? What happens to our boys actually?
47%, according to statistics, 47% of children who are abused are boys. And the abuse happens, child abuse happens by both men and women. So when I train, I often I train with the help of Dr. Shiv Prakash of SCARF. When we go and train children and teachers, we make the comment or we make the statement that neighbor auntie is as dangerous as neighbor uncle, and both are dangerous whether your child is a boy or a girl. So it is. I know it sounds abhorrent to us, but it's true. It is not only girls who are being abused. One
Right.
terrible thing about this, Tamiselvan, that I would like to tell you is that cultures that increasingly protect their girls expose their boys to greater and greater abuse. So, for instance, in our country, 47% of the children who are abused are boys, but in Afghanistan or Pakistan, where it's more difficult to access girl children, nearly 90 to 95% of children who are abused are boys.
Yeah.
And one problem with abuse of boys is that in India, the idea of girls getting pregnant or losing their virginity is a big problem, loss of honor. But a boy has nothing to lose. So the emotional trauma that a boy goes through is sometimes made fun of. I have heard of instances where a father himself makes fun of his son, saying, "What happened? It's not as if he lost his virginity. What is the big deal about it? He hasn't lost anything." So this is a traumatic experience, whether it's a boy or a girl, whether it's a man or a woman. So I would say that the teachers and schools should be equally protective of their girls and boys, and equally aware that any gender of adult is capable of abusive conduct.
There is Subru. I think you want to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. I'm a special educator, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to know with respect to special needs kids, females, it is specifically a lot of times said that they have not understood a particular conduct in a proper way. And so, is there certain guideline for that as well?
Yes.
And we
Yes.
need to understand, and others should also understand the specific cues that they are giving, or if there is certain guideline for that.
Yes. So you are very correct to raise this issue. In fact, I saw another issue or another question related to special children in the chat box. It is very difficult, and I applaud you for working in that area. So I would say that you need to evolve the guidelines. There are certain guidelines and etiquettes that are available, like you must hold a child by the hand or palm to the extent possible. But what if the child can't move at all? Then you are forced to hold the body or hold the upper arms or hold other parts of the body. And with what pressure can you hold a child? So it depends from person to person, from child to child, and from teacher to teacher or volunteer to volunteer. No doubt about it. I think guidelines are still evolving. There are, however, good guidelines. A policy statement will force your volunteers and stakeholders to at least consider these things when they are dealing with special children. And it's also important however, to the extent possible, to communicate with the child. I think because of your special work, you need to also have greater coordination with the parent, because the parent probably will be able to tell you a little more intimate things about the child. I would really, maybe we need to discuss this more to come out with guidelines, but I will point out some guidelines to you. I know that Vidya Sagar is working in developing a policy document and also in working with etiquettes and so on. I would encourage you to reach out to them as well.
Yeah, I think that gives me the question of, who are the people that a school or college should reach out to. I mean, I'm talking about the roles or different types of people, professionals that the school should involve in setting up a compliant educational ecosystem.
Yes.
Yeah, can you just explain on that?
Yes.
Like lawyer, educationalist, psychologist, social
Absolutely.
worker, etc. Yeah.
Yes. So largely now, I think many of the CBSE schools are mandated to have a school counselor, and they are generally psychologists or trained counselors. But in addition, I would say that you should have a psychiatrist on board, at least as a consultant. As you say, an educational consultant is also required, someone who understands the field of psychiatry and education. A lawyer is useful, and a lawyer who is working on child rights or has particular interest or practice in child rights is a good person to have on your consultation team. You should also have contact with medical practitioners. Now, again, I think CBSE and other schools are mandated to have at least a clinical room and a nurse. So it is necessary to have that kind of a contact with a good medical practitioner as well. So at the first level, many of these policy clauses, I can say, or policy ideas, the what needs to get into the policy is available in the legal books, and your lawyer might be able to identify what you need. Thereafter, you need to absolutely get it validated by a psychiatrist or psychologist or a trained educator.
Okay, excellent.
Parent as well. Sorry. So parents are intricately linked with the education process. Your parent-teacher committee will definitely have many inputs, and they will also bring to light many issues. For instance, there are parents who like a segregated school, gender segregated school. There are parents who like a gender integrated school. So it's very important. to have your PTA sitting on these policy meetings to help you evolve a good model.
Right. Okay. Okay. I think Neha, I think you wanted to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Hi, Neha.
It was a really informative and it was a very good session for all of us, ma'am. And I also thank future captains for organizing for such a wonderful session as well. Ma'am, I have a question actually. If a student is getting sexually abused in the school, and if they are complaining, and if the management is not responding properly, and if they are going legally, what do you think actually after the whole process, how the child can continue in the same school, or what child of situation or stress actually the child will undergo, ma'am? Actually, I just wanted to know on that part.
So the psychological aspects of the abuse and the indifference of the school, you will probably have to speak with a psychiatrist. All that I can say is it is pretty traumatic. But what can the child do? So if the school refuses to take the allegation on board, then the child should call 1098 to reach out to the authorities. If the child comes see, one of the issues that I personally think is important is that many children do not have an open and comfortable relationship with their parent or guardian. If there are open channels of communication, I wish the students would contact their parents at the first instance. This will help them to with the required support to approach the authorities and so on. If that kind of open channels are not available, then the best outcome would be to approach the authorities directly. It is also possible if the child can reach out to the counselor, the school counselor, and other than that, there is within the school there is no committee. If there is no committee, then it is very difficult. If the Tamil Nadu government's guideline with regard to the school safety advisory committee, the student safety advisory committee is mandated and required by law, then such a committee might be useful for the child to go and complain. It is very difficult for a young child, girl or boy, to go and complain in a police station. So a committee will actually give them the required space and encouragement to say what they are saying. Then through the committee, they can reach out to the authorities. Yes, but at the moment, the lack of a committee is a very big issue. Contrast this with the Sexual Harassment Act, which requires that there should be an internal complaints committee. POCSO does not require that there should be an internal complaints committee. The JJ Act, Juvenile Justice Act, does not require that there should be an internal complaints committee. However, many institutions have created an internal complaints committee. In the Madras High Court, for instance, there is a gender sensitization and internal complaints committee. This committee is not only responsible for taking on board complaints, but also for providing training, appropriate training and review mechanisms. So I would encourage institutions to create their own internal complaints committee and to leave this committee independently to do their work, to not interfere in the work of the complaints committee, except for oversight and reporting, etc.
Right.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
I think
Good
we
morning.
can, if we have any more questions, we can take
Yeah,
one more question, Swapna, or?
Sure. Okay.
yes,
Okay,
sir,
I
yes,
think we
sir.
have two more. Arati is also there and Subramanian, sir. Okay, go
Yes,
ahead,
sir,
sir.
yes,
Go
sir,
ahead,
yes.
sir. Yeah.
Sir, I am Subramani from Makarish International School, sir. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Ma'am, I have one doubt. There is so many programs and so many, schemes are there from state government and central government to eradicate this kind of problem. Sexual harassment. Act is there, but the problem is going on. How can you make it full stop, ma'am?
It is a sad fact of human life, sir, that I think that whenever there is an opportunity, there will be some people who are making exploitative use of it. So you can scare them, you can prevent them from coming into the premises, or you can deny them access. But beyond that, the only thing we can do is to keep alert, is to be alert as an institution, not to force the child to be alert. So this is something that maybe slightly outside the scope of your question, Mr. Subramani, but let me say this. So in many child safety meetings or training that I attend for children, I find the trainer telling the child If there is somebody coming towards you to, and you experience bad touch, then you should scream and run. Yes, you should scream and run. I have no quarrel with that. But beyond a point, a 4-year-old cannot run, or beyond a point, a 4-year-old cannot scream. I have been in certain circumstances where it has been uncomfortable, where your brain just freezes. You don't even know what to do next. It is not our human body, when it undergoes certain kinds of trauma, we just shut down. So forcing a child to be alert and be ready to tackle and run and scream is, maybe some children, I'm sure, are able to do that. There may be others who are of a milder temperament who may lose their nerve, within quotes. So I think it is impossible to eradicate it, but it is possible to minimize the opportunity for such accidents or incidents to occur. It is possible to build good boundary walls so that such people do not enter our premises, do not access our children, and so on. And then over a period of time, I think we do have a sexual offenders list in the country, which is quite inaccessible. I don't know where it is. But if that offenders list becomes more commonly available, becomes more easily available, then it will help our educators to not employ certain people, or at least inform other people that certain people have allegations against them. That is my answer, Mr. Subramani.
Right.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
also like to add a point on this, Swapna, with your permission. See, I think when I was working with companies, the IT services companies, what they used to do is they used to run yearly, code of business conduct, business ethics training program, and they used to do a lot of awareness program on sexual. How do you talk to people? How do you talk to women employees and things like that? That sensitization, gender sensitization, and the sexual harassment act sensitization, all these things made a lot of things, I think, people aware that what are the consequences will be. Generally, once you are becoming aware of the consequences, you tend to take a back foot in taking advances. Maybe that is what is missing in educational system today, because we are more into admissions, and teaching academics, but not really into the governance part of it. Maybe that's an area where I think we need to focus a lot more, which in my personal view. Right. And I go to with the last question with Arati, Swapna. Would that be okay? Yeah. Yeah, Arati. Okay. Please go ahead with your question, and that will be the last question for the day. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. When you were talking about the child protection officer and the committees and all, you mentioned that it would be appropriate that the senior most staff should be engaged in that. By default, mostly it will be the principals, but you recommended that it should be the senior most staff who should be the. But if that senior staff are not trained or qualified enough, do you recommend any kind of certified or standard training programs where they actually equip themselves with proper information? Do you feel that and recommend any training programs where
Yes.
the senior school staff also can be trained efficiently with the standard and certified programs?
Yes. Yes, I can answer that. Actually, Harati, I think I mentioned that the school committee currently, the constitution of the school committee includes the senior most teachers. And I was saying that it's a little difficult if the teachers are not interested in their work or in that particular activity, then they might not put in their full commitment or time or effort into the school committee. I did not recommend that the senior most officer teacher should be the youth protection officer. I would not say that. In fact, the child protection officer, child safety officer, youth protection officer, youth lead, whatever you call them, should be a person with who has maybe a middle-aged person, definitely, but an energetic person with training in the law, with a passion for child safety. By default, many institutions suggest that it should be a woman. I don't have a statement on that. I don't have an opinion on that. I think a passionate person, whether he is man, woman, or any other non-binary gender, would be perfectly all right, as long as they are passionate, they are well informed, they are rational, they have legal training, and they have courage, and they are willing to stand by the child. That is quite fine, Harati. That would be my answer. As regards training, so a lot of institutions are offering training, including the NCPCR, the National Commission on child rights, and also I think the State Women's Commission, but they are not conducted specifically in policies or protocols. They are largely in the law. So you will get POXO training or you will get JJ Act training, but you will not get training in the policy. So that is a training module that has to be evolved, particular to each policy. So in fact, when we train Rotarians in the Rotary Youth Policy, I bring in somebody from Sundaram Learning Foundation, because corporate institutions are already used to training in policies. So they have Tamil Selvan also will understand what I'm saying. They have an idea about how policy training should be done, or how protocol training or procedure training should be done. That is the kind of training that we require. Of course, what is there in the law needs to be there behind it, but what the teacher or non-teaching staff needs to do on the ground can only be provided in policy training.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So if there anybody's interested to work on the policy drafting or setting up the committee, etc., can they reach out to you for any support that is required by the institution?
Oh yes, yes, definitely, Tamil Selvan. I would request you to reach out to Tamil Selvan. He will connect you to me. If you can also put up your details on chat for me to respond, or for Tamil Selvan to respond. But we also have, I think, a feedback form. Am I right?
Yes, yeah. We have a feedback form.
So you can please inform on the feedback form, and we'll definitely get back to you. Is that?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great. So I think we have come to the fag end of the session, and Swapna ma'am, I think thank you so much for it's an awareness session for me as well as a parent. What I need to do, and of course we are working with a lot of schools, so it can also help us to take this forward to many institutions and spread awareness. And thanks for sparing your valuable time. I think colleges and schools both have to be sensitive to these offenses, protecting both teachers and the students. And I think we have to build a community around it. And I think the next step I'm looking forward is to build a community around it where we can reach out to each other and support each other in building a safe ecosystem for our children. So that's going to be a next step for Future Captains. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward to having you part of that grand mission forward.
Yeah, I do think that's a good step to take. It'll also help us to remain in touch with the latest standards globally, and also an interchange or exchange of information can happen, which will all probably lead to a better outcome for all of us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I thank all the participants and the great questions. The school leaders, teachers, parents, whoever took time to come on a Sunday morning. I know I see a lot of names. They should have gone for Sunday morning church, but they have been present here. I think that shows the kind of commitment that they have given up. To come for this session. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Let's stay in touch, and do give your feedback on the feedback form. We'll be sharing an ebook that is developed by Swapna ma'am on the governance model for preventing sexual abuses in the campus. So that ebook will be shared to all of those who have filled the feedback form, and of course we'll be sharing a certificate as well for participating. So thank you, and stay safe. And looks like a third wave on the and so let's
no, it won't be.
It won't be okay. So let's stay a little careful. No cause for complacency. It's what I wanted to leave. Yeah,
of course.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Thank you.
All the best. Thank you everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.